In the ancient land of Eldrith, nestled between black mountains and silver seas, there reigned a king named Malgar the Cruel. His name alone was enough to still conversations and shroud taverns in silence. Malgar was not always wicked. Once, he was a just and noble ruler, beloved by his people and respected by his allies. But as the years wore on and the crown pressed heavier upon his brow, Malgar's heart grew hard, his thirst for power insatiable. It began with the execution of dissenters. First, it was a few outspoken nobles who questioned the rising taxes. Then it was scholars, priests, and even farmers who dared whisper their discontent. Malgar's spies were everywhere, his dungeons always full. The once bright kingdom fell into shadow, and the skies above the capital seemed to perpetually reflect the grim mood of its people. Malgar believed fear was loyalty. He razed entire villages for harboring rebels, and his soldiers, the infamous Crimson Guard, rode under banners soaked in the blood of those who defied him. Eldrith groaned under his iron grip. Yet in the midst of darkness, a spark flickered. Prince Calin, Malgar's only son, had watched his father's descent with quiet anguish. As a boy, he remembered the laughter of the townsfolk and the melodies of bards in the great halls. But by the time Calin turned 17, the kingdom was a husk of its former self. He had been trained as a warrior and a statesman, but also taught to obey. Malgar made sure his son never forgot who wielded power. But Calin possessed something his father had long buried: compassion. One autumn night, Calin disguised himself and ventured beyond the palace walls. He had heard whispers of famine and plague in the outskirts, stories his father had dismissed as lies. What he saw haunted him. Starving children begging in the cold, fields salted by soldiers to break rebel supplies, mothers weeping over makeshift graves. That night Prince Calin made a vow. He would free Eldrith or die trying. He began in secret, rallying loyalists to the cause, old generals cast aside by Malgar, scholars in hiding, and even remnants of the rebel factions. In the mountain forests, he formed the Order of the Phoenix, named for the bird that rises from ashes. Word spread, quietly at first, but it carried the weight of hope. Calin's greatest challenge came not from soldiers or spies, but from doubt. Could he truly overthrow his own father? Could he draw blood from the man who had once carried him on his shoulders and taught him to ride? The turning point came when Malgar ordered the execution of 50 children from a village accused of harboring traitors. Calin rode to the site too late to stop it. What he found there, lifeless bodies, scorched homes, the wails of the bereft, broke something within him. That night, he renounced his blood ties in front of his followers. Malgar is no longer my father, he declared, but a tyrant I must end. The rebellion gathered momentum. Cities long oppressed rose up. Some fell quickly to Malgar's armies, but others held, inspired by Calin's leadership and the just cause he carried like a banner. Skirmishes became battles, battles became war. After 2 years of conflict, the siege of Eldranther, the capital, began. Calin's forces surrounded the city. Malgar, mad with fury, stood atop the obsidian walls, vowing to fight to the death. Inside, the people starved as supplies dwindled. Calin sent a messenger, offering safe exile if Malgar surrendered. The response was the messenger's head. On the 13th day of siege, a secret gate, long sealed but remembered by an aged steward, was opened from within. Calin led a small force into the heart of the city. As fires raged and the Crimson Guard was overwhelmed, Calin made his way to the throne room. There, in the cold hall lined with statues of dead kings, stood Malgar, his sword dripping red. "Have you come to kill me, boy?" he snarled. "I made you. You are mine." Calin raised his blade but hesitated. "You made a monster," he said. "But I choose to be more." They fought, not just steel against steel, but father against son, tyranny against justice. Malgar, though old, fought with the desperation of a man who had nothing left but pride. Calin, younger and stronger, disarmed him after a brutal duel. On his knees, Malgar sneered. You think this makes you a hero? No, Kaelin replied. But it ends your reign. He did not kill his father. Instead, he cast him into the very dungeons Malgar had filled for decades, where he would live out his days among the ghosts of his victims. Kaelin was crowned not with celebration, but with quiet solemnity. He walked among the people, not above them. The kingdom needed more than a new king, it needed healing. Years passed, and under King Kaelin's rule, Eldrith bloomed again. Laws were rewritten, temples rebuilt, songs returned to the wind. And deep beneath the palace, in the dark where no sunlight reached, the wicked king sat alone, forgotten by history, remembered only in the stories mothers told their children. Do not let your heart grow cruel, lest you become like Malgar the Cruel, who lost a kingdom to a son who dared to love. King Kaelin's reign began with a heavy heart. Though he wore the crown, it felt more like a burden than a prize. The war had left scars, not just on the land, but on its people. Fields were still ash, widows still mourned, and the once great libraries of Eldranther smoldered ruins. His first decree was a simple one: no man shall rule by fear again. He dismantled the Crimson Guard, offering amnesty to those who swore loyalty to peace and justice. Some accepted, casting away their red cloaks like serpents shedding skin. Others vanished into the night, vowing vengeance. Kaelin knew not all evil dies with a tyrant. In place of the old council of nobles, many of whom had fed on Malgar's tyranny, Kaelin formed the Circle of the Commons, inviting farmers, blacksmiths, scholars, and even healers to shape the laws of the realm. It was unprecedented, and not without resistance. The old bloodlines grumbled. One noblewoman spat during her trial, "You may sit on the throne, boy, but you will never sit easy." Kaelin didn't. His dreams were haunted. Not by his father's face, but by silence. The silence of those he couldn't save. The children. The villagers. His mother, who died when Kaelin was young, whose gentle songs he barely remembered. Even in victory, he felt haunted by failure. Deep in the dungeons of the Black Keep, Malgar remained. His cell was narrow, the walls damp, the air thick with mildew. But Malgar did not rage. He did not scream. He waited. Each day, a young guard brought him food. At first, Malgar ignored him. But over time, he began to speak. His voice, once thundering, was now cracked but cunning. "You think Kaelin is different?" he whispered one evening. "Power always corrupts. You'll see." The guard, a boy named Duran, listened in silence. Too young to know the old king's full cruelty, he found himself strangely drawn to the prisoner's stories. "You're no monster," Duran once said. "You're just forgotten." Malgar smiled. "The world always forgets kings until it needs one again." And slowly, over weeks, Malgar wove his words like poison ivy, quiet, clinging, patient. In the 3rd year of Kaelin's reign, storm clouds gathered on Eldritha's borders. To the east, the kingdom of Varelia, once kept at bay by fear of Malgar, saw opportunity in Eldritha's rebuilding. Their emissaries came with flattery and gifts, but also veiled threat. "Strength," said the Varelian ambassador, "lies not in mercy, but in dominance." Kaelin refused their demands for land and trade monopolies. Quietly, Varelian soldiers began amassing on the borders. At the same time, rumors spread within Eldrith that Kaelin was weak, that he was merely a boy in a dead man's crown. Some whispered that Malgar should return, that he was cruel, yes, but strong. The seeds of doubt had begun to bloom. Kaelin rode often alone now, finding solace in the windswept cliffs where he once trained with his father. One day, he found an old sword buried beneath an oak, rusted, ancient. Not one of his, not even his father's. It bore no crest, just a simple engraving. "Even kings must kneel to truth." He stared at it for a long time, the wind howling through the leaves. Back in the capital, a message awaited him, an intercepted letter from the dungeon guard, Duran. It was addressed to a faction of former Crimson Guard. "He still lives. And he remembers. The old king waits. If we free him, Eldrith will rise again, greater than before.